Well, tomorrow, jurors will continue deliberations in the Jesse Ventura defamation trial. They deliberated for nearly 25 hours last week in St. Paul without coming to a verdict. The former Minnesota governor says he was defamed in the book American Sniper when Chris Kyle claimed he punched out Ventura in a bar fight after Ventura allegedly made offensive comments about Navy SEALs. Ventura says it never happened, and the story has cost him his career. A number of experts have expressed surprise the jury is taking this long. Among those experts, Hamline University law professor David Schultz. Thank you so much for joining us.
You're
Always
welcome.
a pleasure. All right, let's get right to it. You study these things. You're actually somewhat of an expert in this case. Why do you think the jury is taking so long? What could be going on?
Well, there's two possibilities. Possibility one is that the jury honestly hasn't made up its mind yet. It hasn't figured out whether or not the story by Chris Kyle is substantially true or not. That's one possibility. I think it's unlikely. I think the more likely scenario is that it's a 10-person jury, that it's a split jury at this point, that you have several jurors who have made up their mind and want to rule in favor of Kyle, several in favor of Ventura, and they're not going to be able to bridge that gap. It's just literally, I'm going to make up a number, it's 7-3, 6-4, who knows, whatever it is, could even be 9-1, but they're just stuck.
So what happens? I mean, what happens if they can't reach a verdict, if they keep coming, and we don't know if they've come to the judge, because there have been 3 questions that have been asked, and the judge hasn't revealed those. I mean, what happens if they can't come to an agreement? Well,
if they can't come to an agreement, a judge can order at that point and say that it's a mistrial, and basically say that, well, mistrial basically means they didn't come to a verdict, and at that point, then Jesse Ventura has to make a decision. If it's a mistrial, at that point, Jesse Ventura has to decide, does he want to proceed and go to a second trial, and start the whole process all over again, or does he walk away? So that's really what we would be at some point, I would think, this week, because I can't imagine that the judge would let the jury go another full week. At some point this week, the jury is going to have to come to the judge and say, we can't reach a verdict, or the judge is going to say, is there any chance you're going to come to a conclusion? And if they say no, order a mistrial.
I've covered trials where juries have come back and said, we can't reach a verdict, and the judge says, go back, keep working. I mean, where is the fine line there? I mean,
the judge will have to talk to the jury and actually get some kind of sense of what the impasse is at this point. And again, if it's because they haven't made up their mind, that's a different story, because it suggests they will. But if it's really entrenched, if they see no ability to change, let's say, 1 juror's mind or 2 jurors' mind to get that unanimous verdict, that's really a discretionary call by the judge. And again, he'll be talking to the jury, I would assume, sometime this week to find out. He might have already been doing it last week, because, as you point out, we don't know what those 3 queries were to the judge, and they could have been queries about something in terms of saying that we can't break an impasse.
Do they come back all at once with, if they do find that he's been defamed, do they come back all at once saying he's been defamed and with the actual monetary damages, or is that in 2 separate steps?
No, that'll come all at the same time. So and it's important to point out here, there's really sort of 2 issues here on one level, which is the defamation issue. Was Jesse Ventura defamed? And if they conclude yes, it's still how much damage is he entitled to? And it's not inconceivable for a jury to come back and say, yes, there was defamation, but then award Jesse Ventura perhaps $1 in terms of saying that he suffered no real damages.
He says he should get up to $15 million. He said in the aftermath of leaving the governor's office, he made $11 million over a period of a decade. Now his income, he says, is down to $100,000. You've written about this. Do you think that's because of Chris Kyle's book?
I don't. I think it's a whole bunch of other factors in terms of a lot of other things that Jesse Ventura has done since he left office, statements that he's made about 9/11 in terms of arguing that maybe President Bush was behind it, comments that he's made about the Kennedy assassination, just all types of different things. The difficulty is to collect. He has to show that it's because of the book, the statements in the book, that caused the loss of income. And it's going to be hard to sort out all those different things that have gone on top of the fact of which now is that there's huge negative public opinion about the fact that Jesse Ventura decided to continue the case after Chris Kyle was murdered, and he decided to continue the case against the estate or against the widow of Chris Kyle.
Right, and obviously he's getting hammered on that on social media, and that's one of the reasons you were actually going to be called as a defense witness for the widow, and in the end they decided not to call you, but you were going to say that on the witness stand if you had been called.
Well, among other things, that was going to be one of the things I was going to say, but also to say that there's no real clear evidence that in fact that his reputation was damaged by the book, and that in fact any loss of income over time that he has suffered has been perhaps as a result of other actions that he's taken in terms of, again, controversial statements that he's uttered.
All right. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Certainly, we would expect sometime this week.
Yes, I think so.
Okay. All right. David Schultz, thank you so much. Always a pleasure.
You're welcome.
All right.